All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Welcome, everyone. Today we're unpacking a genuinely fascinating and honestly kind of unsettling text by Nick Sasaki. He synthesized an interview with psychic and remote viewer Nikki Dutta and then stacked her insights up against this imagined mastermind panel of historical and spiritual giants. And it all revolves around one completely wild premise. What actually happens when human beings tap into hidden knowledge before their hearts are fully ready to carry it?
I mean, it really forces us to challenge a super common assumption, doesn't it? Like, if someone can see beyond normal perception, say they have psychic abilities like remote viewing, or they can literally influence reality, does that automatically make them spiritually advanced? Well, the source material we're looking at today gives a huge, resounding no. Spiritual ability and spiritual maturity, totally different things. Actually, getting access to the unseen without the character to handle it might just be the most dangerous trap of all.
You gotta think of a spiritual gift as a completely morally neutral tool, right? It's exactly like a knife. You can use a knife to prep a beautiful meal to feed somebody, or you can use it to cause harm. Or think of fire. It can warm your whole house, or it can burn the entire thing to the ground. The gift itself is entirely neutral. It literally only becomes sacred or incredibly dangerous based entirely on the user's ego and their moral intention, or what the text simply calls the heart. So to really wrap our heads around this, here's the roadmap for our explainer today. First, we'll look at the morality of gifts, then the shadow of manifestation, followed by the hidden burdens healers face. After that, we'll navigate a split reality, dive into the origins of ancient knowledge, and finally, look at the ultimate test of wisdom. Let's get right into it. All right, Section 1, the morality of gifts, neutrality versus intention. According to the text, folks who practice things like mediumship or energy healing have to constantly ask themselves, does this action actually serve the highest good? Because if not, they risk this thing called spiritual inflation, which is basically when the ego totally hijacks the intuition. To really drive this point home, the text brings in the philosopher Socrates. He essentially asks, do you know what goodness is? Because if you don't, how on earth can you know whether your gift serves it? It's a demand for a really rigorous moral self-exam for anyone claiming to have special insight. If you're walking around saying, hey, I know what others can't know, but you haven't dug into your own motives, well, your confidence is actually a huge liability. Confidence without profound wisdom doesn't amplify your virtue, it literally just amplifies your ignorance. And then we get the psychological side of this argument from Carl Jung. Jung warns us that making contact with the unseen, or, the deep unconscious, doesn't just magically make you pure. Far from it. In fact, if a person's shadow, meaning their hidden vanity, their fears, or their hunger for power, if that stays unexamined, accessing hidden knowledge is just going to fuel their grandiosity. They start identifying as the divine source itself, rather than just being a humble vessel for it. Moving on to Section 2, the shadow of manifestation, ego versus the highest good. Look, we live in a culture that is constantly telling us we can just call in wealth, status, and the absolute perfect life. But how do you actually know if you're manifesting from the right place? The text pulls from teachers like Neville Goddard and Paramahansa Yogananda, and it draws a really sharp line here. Personal desire, it usually feels kind of frantic. It carries this urgency, a sense of panic, and honestly, an obsessive need to control reality. Divine guidance, on the flip side, feels like peace. It feels like clarity. It definitely doesn't panic, and sometimes, it just waits. I want you to think about the last time you didn't get a job or an opportunity you desperately wanted. Maybe it was that one apartment you just knew was meant to be yours. The 13th century mystic Rumi is brought into the text with this absolutely incredible poetic truth. He says, "You ask for a cup, the beloved wants to make you the sea." Basically, sometimes a delayed manifestation, or just straight up not getting what you so desperately want, is actually an act of cosmic mercy. We so often ask for things that are just way too small for our soul's actual growth. The universe might be withholding a tiny little cup because it fully intends to give you the entire sea, if you can just be patient enough to grow into it. Which brings us to Section 3, the healer's burden, compassion versus control. The source text highlights a really severe trap in the healing professions, this hidden exhaustion caused by blurring boundaries and constantly absorbing other people's karma. And it leads to a super provocative question. Can a healer help others without secretly needing to be seen as special? Think about it. When people praise a practitioner and say, "Oh my gosh, you saved me," that can become incredibly addictive. The subtle trap here is that helping others morphs into a disguised need for control and validation. I mean, if the healer subconsciously needs the patient to stay broken,
healing just so the healer can keep feeling valuable, that healing has become entirely toxic.
So, this synthesized voice of the Buddha offers the perfect antidote here. True service requires offering your care, offering your presence, and then completely letting go of the outcome. You literally cannot force another person to awaken. And you certainly shouldn't be building an ego-driven identity around being some kind of savior. You just do the right action and then you step back. All right, Section 4, navigating a split reality, losing a shared center. Now, the source material takes a genuinely mind-bending turn right here. It references Nikki Dutta's expectation of a destabilized shared reality happening around the year 2026. The idea is that we are entering this phase where people can be standing in the exact same room, experiencing the exact same events, but living in completely different, highly polarized timelines of understanding. The text actually uses the Mandela Effect to illustrate this. Rather than just dismissing it as some quirky memory error, voices like Terence McKenna suggest that our shared reality is actually a negotiated hallucination. And right now, under immense cultural pressure, that hallucination is fracturing. Groups of people are literally remembering and experiencing totally different versions of reality, which signals a massive collapse in our shared narrative. To assess the danger of this, science fiction writer Philip K. Dick is brought into the conversation. The text contrasts a true spiritual awakening, which, by the way, should inherently bring you more peace, humility, and compassion, with the paranoia and the tribalism that happens when a society completely loses its objective consensus. Because, let's be real, if your quote-unquote awakening just makes you cruel and paranoid toward anyone who doesn't see what you see, well, you haven't really woken up, have you? You've just found a brand new prison. Moving into Section 5, ancient knowledge, invented or received. So if our modern maps of reality are currently fracturing, we gotta ask, where did the original profound spiritual maps, things like chakras and prana, where did they even come from in the first place? The text summarizes viewpoints from Nikki Dutta and author Graham Hancock, and they point out how incredibly complex systems and repeated global symbols, like serpents and star maps, keep appearing across totally disconnected ancient cultures. This strongly hints that this stuff wasn't just invented locally around a campfire. It suggests that sacred knowledge was actually received from higher consciousness, star lineages, or divine teachers, rather than just pieced together through trial and error. To back that up, the text channels Patanjali, the ancient sage of yoga. He makes the argument that the ancient seers absolutely didn't invent these elaborate energetic systems. Instead, they did the rigorous, incredibly difficult work to completely still the mind's disturbances. And once the mind was finally quiet, they were able to directly perceive an eternal structure that was already sitting right there. It was discovery, but through intense internal purification. Which brings us, finally, to Section 6, the final test. Gift versus wisdom. Everything we've covered today, from remote viewing to manifestation to healing, all the way to reality shifts, it all leads back to the exact same bottleneck, the human heart. Because the heart is almost never neutral. Accessing the unseen safely requires immense, rigorous purification. And that is the core thesis here. A gift is not the same as wisdom. Wanting magical signs before you can even sit quietly in silence, or desiring spiritual power before you've achieved any kind of moral purity, that doesn't make you enlightened. It really only makes your psychological shadow far more dangerous, both to yourself and to the people around you. So what's the ultimate takeaway from all this? According to the source, true initiation isn't about seeing ghosts or bending reality to your will. No way. It's about developing concrete, grounded virtues, things like love, humility, truth, patience, self-control, compassion, and surrender. The real test is becoming trustworthy enough in your own character to safely hold the mysteries of the universe. I want to leave you with this lingering, really provocative thought. As our world continues to change and perhaps opens up to totally new realities, this is the ultimate self-reflection required of every single seeker out there. Can you hold the mystery without turning it into an identity? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating material with me today. Keep asking the deep questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.